What if I told you that an entire black community was erased from the map, not over decades, but in one single night, simply because one man tried to vote? November 1920, Election Day, Ocoee, Florida, a prosperous black farming community of 255 souls, families who owned land, businesses, churches, schools, people who had built something from nothing. By sunrise on November 3rd, it was ashes, bodies floating in Lake Apopka, families running through darkness guided only by the flames consuming their homes, mothers carrying babies through alligator-infested swamps, the sky glowing orange with the fire of 25 black homes, 2 churches and a fraternity lodge, 30 to 60 black Americans murdered. The exact number we'll never know, because they didn't count black bodies. To them, black lives had no number worth recording. And here's what they really don't want you to know. For 60 years after that night, not a single black person was allowed to live in Ocoee. 60 years, an entire generation. If you were black and you tried to return to the town where your family had lived for generations, you'd be met with a simple message: leave or die. This is the single bloodiest day in American political history. And they never taught you about it in school. They buried this story in mass graves and silence. They erased it from textbooks. They changed the names to hide the truth. They made sure your grandmother never told you. Your teacher never mentioned it. Your history book skipped right over it. But today that ends. In the next hour, you're going to discover why your vote was paid for in blood, why they fight so hard to keep you from the ballot box, why they don't want you to know this story, and why this massacre explains everything about voter suppression today. This isn't ancient history. This happened 104 years ago. Your great-grandparents' generation lived through this terror. If your family lived anywhere in Central Florida in 1920, this could have been your ancestors burned alive for trying to exercise their constitutional right. This is why they pass voter ID laws. This is why they close polling places in black neighborhoods. This is why they purge voter rolls. This is why they make you wait in line for 4 hours, while white neighborhoods vote in 10 minutes. Because Ocoee taught them something. You don't need to kill black voters anymore. You just need to stop them from reaching the ballot. By the end of this video, you'll know the real reason Mose Norman was turned away from voting and what he said that triggered a genocide. You'll know how July Perry, a millionaire black landowner, was tortured, lynched, and displayed as a warning to every black person in Florida. You'll know why nobody was prosecuted and how the entire massacre was erased from history for 75 years. And you'll never see Election Day the same way again. Let me take you back to Ocoee, Florida in 1920. Before the massacre, before the flames, before the blood. Ocoee in 1920 wasn't what you think. This wasn't a ghetto. This wasn't a slum. This wasn't poverty. This was black prosperity, black independence, black wealth. And that terrified white supremacy. The 1920 census tells us the facts. Ocoee had 255 black residents. They owned land, hundreds of acres of orange groves and farmland, in what would become some of the most valuable real estate in Central Florida. They owned homes, businesses, farms. They had built a complete community with everything they needed. 2 black churches stood in the northern part of town: Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church and the AME Church. These weren't just places of worship. They were community centers, places where marriages were recorded, births, documented, land deals witnessed. The churches held the paperwork that proved black people owned property, that they existed, that they mattered. There was a black school where children learned to read and write, a fraternal lodge where men gathered to discuss business and community protection, black-owned stores where families could shop without being called names or cheated. This community had something that made white supremacists lie awake at night: self-sufficiency. Black families in Ocoee didn't need white approval to survive. They had their own economy, their own institutions, their own land, and most dangerous of all, they had their own political power. See, Ocoee sat in Orange County, Florida, just west of Orlando. In 1920, Orlando was growing fast. The citrus industry was booming, land values were skyrocketing, and white businessmen were watching black farmers sitting on prime real estate getting richer every harvest season. But there was a problem. You couldn't just take land from black people anymore. Not legally. Not after the 15th Amendment gave black men the right to vote in 1870. Not after Reconstruction briefly gave black people political representation. So they found other ways. Poll taxes. You had to pay money to vote. Most black farmers could barely scrape together enough to pay, but they did it because they knew the vote was power. Literacy tests. You had to read and interpret complex legal language to prove you could vote. The registrar would hand a black man a section of the state constitution and ask him to explain it. If he got one word wrong, he failed. Meanwhile, white men who could barely write their own names were waved right through. Grandfather clauses. If your grandfather voted before 1867, you didn't need to take the test or pay the tax. Convenient, right? Because black people's grandfathers were enslaved before 1867. They couldn't vote. So their grandsons had to jump through every hoop while white men walked straight to the ballot box. These weren't laws. This was theft. Theft of power. Theft of voice. Theft of citizenship. But here's what makes 1920 special. This was the year everything came to a head. World War I had just ended 2 years earlier. Black men had fought in that war. They'd worn the uniform. They'd bled for America in French trenches. They'd come home expecting the democracy they'd fought for overseas to apply to them at home. They were done asking politely. The NAACP was running a massive voter registration campaign across the South. Get every eligible black man registered. Get them to the polls. Exercise the rights that Reconstruction had promised and Jim Crow had stolen. In Florida, the Republican Party was working with black communities. Now, this wasn't the Republican Party you know today. Back then, it was the party of Lincoln. The party that had freed the slaves. The party that black people trusted. And in 1920, they were making a serious push to register black voters. One man leading that charge was Judge John M. Cheney, a white Republican judge running for state senate. He believed in the Constitution. He believed black men had the right to vote, and he wasn't quiet about it. In the months leading up to the election, Judge Cheney organized voter registration drives in black communities around Orange County. He helped black men navigate the deliberately confusing registration process. He helped them understand their rights. He told them, you have the same right to vote as any white man in this country. Don't let anyone tell you different, the Ku Klux Klan noticed. On September 20th, 1920, 6 weeks before the election, the Klan sent Judge Cheney a letter. It was short and clear. Stop encouraging black people to vote, or there will be serious trouble. Judge Cheney ignored it. 3 days before Election Day, the Klan marched through the streets of Orlando in broad daylight. Hundreds of them. White robes, burning crosses. They wanted black people to see them, to be afraid, to stay home on Election Day. Some did stay home, but not all. 2 men in Ocoee were determined to vote no matter what. Their names were Mose Norman and July Perry. Let me tell you about Mose Norman first. Mose Norman was a black farmer. He owned land in Ocoee, good land, citrus groves that produced fruit every season. He was known in the community as a smart man, educated, someone who understood how the system worked and wasn't afraid to challenge it when it was wrong. Norman had been part of Judge Cheney's voter registration campaign. He'd helped other black men in Ocoee register to vote. He'd even paid the poll tax for several men who couldn't afford it. He knew the law, he knew his rights, and he knew exactly what he was walking into on November 1920. That morning, Mose Norman woke up before sunrise. He got dressed in his Sunday clothes. Clean shirt, pressed pants, hat. He looked like a man going to do something important. Because he was. He walked to the polling place in Ocoee. It was set up in a building in the white part of town. He walked through the door at 7 in the morning, right when the polls opened. The poll workers saw him coming. Their faces changed. You know that look. That look that says, "What are you doing here?" Mose Norman walked up to the table and said his name. Said he was there to vote. Said he was a registered voter and a taxpayer. The poll worker didn't even look at the registration book. He just shook his head. "You can't vote. You didn't pay your poll tax." Now Mose Norman was ready for this. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a receipt. Proof that he had paid his poll tax weeks earlier. He set it on the table in front of the poll worker. The man barely glanced at it. "That's not valid. You need to leave." Mose Norman stood there. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make threats. He just said, "I have the right to vote. I'm registered. I paid my tax. I'm not leaving until I vote." The poll workers called the police. 2 officers showed up, both white. They told Mose Norman he needed to leave, or he'd be arrested for disturbing the peace. For trying to exercise his constitutional right, he was being threatened with jail. Mose Norman looked at them, looked at the poll workers, looked at the ballot box he wasn't going to be allowed to touch, and he made a decision. He left. But he didn't go home. He got in his car and drove straight to Orlando to find Judge John Chaney. When he found the judge, Mose Norman told him everything. Told him about being turned away despite having proof of payment. Told him about the threats. Told him he wanted to try again. And here's what Judge Chaney said. "Get the names of the poll workers who denied you. We'll sue Orange County. We'll take this to court. You have every right to vote, and I'll help you fight for it." So Mose Norman got back in his car and drove back to Ocoee. But this time, he wasn't alone. He brought other black men with him, men from the community who had also been denied, men who had also paid their taxes and registered legally, men who were tired of being told no. It was late afternoon now. The sun was starting to set. When they arrived back at the polling place, the atmosphere had changed. There were white men standing outside. Not poll workers, not police, just white men. Armed. Watching. Waiting. Mose Norman walked back inside anyway. The poll workers saw him and their faces went hard. "We already told you. You can't vote. Leave now." Mose Norman asked for their names. Asked them to write down officially why they were denying him. He was building a legal case. He was doing everything right. That's when things got violent. The white men outside came inside. They surrounded Mose Norman and the other black men with him. They started shouting, pushing. One of them shoved Norman hard enough that he stumbled. The police showed up again. But this time, they didn't just tell him to leave. They beat him. Right there in the polling place, in front of witnesses. Police officers beating a black man for trying to vote. Mose Norman fought back just enough to get away. He ran. The other men scattered. They knew what was coming next. In 1920, when white men formed a mob and the police helped them, black people died. Mose Norman ran to the one place he thought might be safe, the home of July Perry. Let me tell you about July Perry now, because his story is the part that will break your heart. Julius Perry. Everyone called him July. He was one of the wealthiest black men in Ocoee. He owned land property, a successful farm. He had built something real, something that could be passed down to his children and grandchildren. Generational wealth. The thing they tell you black people never had because we didn't work hard enough. Lie. We had it. They took it. July Perry was more than just wealthy. He was respected. Even some white people in Ocoee respected him because his success was undeniable. He paid his debts. He kept his word. He worked harder than anyone. And he had the receipts to prove it. property deeds, tax records, business licenses. He and Mose Norman were close. Both men had been part of the voter registration effort. Both had encouraged other black men in Ocoee to register. Both had helped pay poll taxes for men who couldn't afford it. July Perry knew that when black people voted, they could protect their land. They could elect sheriffs who wouldn't look the other way when black property was stolen. They could elect judges who would actually enforce the law equally. The vote wasn't just about politics. It was about survival. So when Mose Norman showed up at his house that evening, bleeding, terrified, saying that white men were coming, July Perry didn't hesitate. He let him in. He locked the doors. He loaded his rifle. And then he waited. July Perry's house was in the northern part of Ocoee, the black part of town. His family was there, his wife, his children, other relatives. When he heard that a mob was forming, he sent word to other black men in the neighborhood. If they come, we defend our homes. And they did come. By 8 o'clock that night, word had spread through Orlando and the surrounding areas. A black man had attacked white poll workers. That was the lie they told. A black man had tried to force his way into voting and assaulted police officers. None of it was true. But truth didn't matter. Within 2 hours, a mob of white men gathered. Hundreds of them. They came from Orlando, from Winter Garden, from Apopka. They came with guns, torches, gasoline, ropes. They weren't coming to arrest Mose Norman. They were coming to kill him, and anyone who helped him, and anyone who looked like him. They marched toward the black section of Ocoee like an army. July Perry stood inside his house rifle in his hands and watched the torches coming through the darkness. He knew what this was. He'd heard the stories. Wilmington, Atlanta, East St. Louis. Tulsa was still a year away, but the pattern was already clear. When white mobs came for black communities, they didn't stop until everything was destroyed. July Perry could have handed Mose Norman over, could have opened the door and said, "Here he is. Just leave my family alone." He didn't. He chose to stand. He chose honor over survival. He chose to be a man who protected his friend, instead of a man who saved himself by betraying someone else. The mob surrounded his house. They shouted for Mose Norman to come out, shouted for July Perry to send him out or else. July Perry shouted back, "You're not taking him! Leave my property!" They didn't leave. Someone fired the first shot. We don't know who. Some reports say it came from inside the house. Some say it came from the mob. It doesn't matter. Once the first shot was fired, hell broke loose. The mob opened fire on the house. Bullets tore through the walls. Windows shattered. July Perry fired back. Other black men in the house fired back. They were defending their lives, their families, their homes. This wasn't a riot. This was self-defense. But the mob had more guns, more men, more ammunition. They set fire to the house, poured gasoline on the walls and lit it. The flames spread fast. July Perry and his family had two choices: burn alive or run into the gunfire. They ran. July Perry was hit, shot multiple times as he tried to escape his burning home. He collapsed in the yard. The mob descended on him, beat him, dragged him through the dirt, tied him up. They took him to the Orange County Jail in Orlando. He was bleeding, dying. But they didn't take him to get medical help. They threw him in a cell. By now it was after midnight, November 9, 1920. Mose Norman had escaped. No one knew where he went. But the mob didn't care anymore. They had July Perry, and they wanted blood. What happened next is one of the most evil things you'll ever hear. The mob came back to the jail in the early morning hours. They demanded the jailers hand over July Perry. And you know what the police did? They unlocked the cell and gave him to them. The people who were supposed to protect him handed him to a lynch mob. They dragged July Perry out of that jail, beat him more, tortured him, and then they lynched him. They hanged him from a tree. But here's the detail that shows you exactly what this was about. They didn't hang him just anywhere. They hanged him in front of Judge John Cheney's house, the judge who had encouraged black people to vote. They hung July Perry's body there as a message. This is what happens when you help them. This is what happens when you encourage them. This is what happens when you treat them like equals. After July Perry was dead, they shot his body. Multiple times, riddled it with bullets. They wanted to make sure that every black person in Central Florida saw what happened, saw the consequences of trying to vote. July Perry's body hung there as a warning, as terrorism, as a promise that this would happen to anyone else who dared to demand their rights. But the mob wasn't finished, not even close. While July Perry was being lynched, the mob went back to Ocoee, and they burned everything. Let me paint you a picture of what that night was like. Because you need to see this. You need to feel this. Imagine you're a black mother in Ocoee. It's after midnight. You hear shouting outside. You smell smoke. You look out your window and you see torches, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, moving through your neighborhood like demons. You hear gunshots, screaming, the sound of glass breaking, the sound of wood cracking as buildings collapse. You grab your children. You wake your husband. You have seconds to decide. Do you try to hide in the house and hope they pass you by? Or do you run into the darkness and hope you don't get shot? Most people ran. They ran toward Lake Apopka, toward the swamps and forests around Ocoee, places where white men might not follow, places where you could hide in the water and the darkness and the thick vegetation. Mothers carried babies on their backs. Fathers carried toddlers in their arms. Elderly people who could barely walk were helped by younger family members. They ran barefoot through mud and water, ran past snakes and alligators, ran guided only by the orange glow of their homes burning behind them. Some people didn't make it. We don't know how many, because they never counted. They never investigated. They never cared. The mob went house to house in the black section of Ocoee. If a house was empty, they looted it first, took anything valuable, then burned it. If people were still inside, they burned it anyway. 25 black homes burned that night, every single one in the northern part of town. The mob burned Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, the building where families had worshipped for generations, where marriages had been performed, where funerals had been held, where the community had gathered to pray and sing and find strength. They poured gasoline on the pews and watched it burn to the ground. They burned the AME church too. Both houses of God, gone. They burned the Fraternal Lodge, the place where black men had gathered to discuss business and community protection, the place where they'd planned how to register voters, how to protect their rights, how to build a future for their children. They burned the black school, the building where children had learned to read and write, where they'd studied history and mathematics, where they'd been taught that education was the path to freedom. Every institution that black people had built, every place that represented black autonomy and black success, burned. And here's what's crucial. When they burned these buildings, they didn't just destroy wood and brick. They destroyed records, property deeds, birth certificates, marriage licenses, proof of land ownership, proof that black people had lived there, had owned things, had built something. That was intentional. They weren't just killing people. They were erasing evidence, making sure that in 20 years, in 50 years, no one could prove that black people had ever owned that land. So when the families came back to claim their property, they'd be told, "Prove you owned it." And they couldn't, because the proof was ashes. By sunrise on November 3rd, 1920, the black community of Ocoee was gone. Not just damaged, not just displaced. Gone. The official death count from that night is somewhere between 30 and 60 black people, but historians believe the real number is much higher. Some estimates go as high as 100. Why don't we know the exact number? Because they didn't investigate. No one counted the bodies. No one searched the swamps. No one dredged the lake. No one cared. 2 white men died that night. Both were killed during the attack on July Perry's house when he and other black men defended themselves. The newspapers made those 2 deaths front-page news, called them heroes who died fighting a Negro uprising. The 30 to 60 black deaths barely mentioned, described as unfortunate casualties, troublemakers who got what they deserved. The families who survived spent days and weeks hiding in the woods, hiding in nearby towns, terrified to go back. Some of them never found each other again. Families were separated that night and never reunited. Children lost parents. Parents lost children. Those who did try to return to Ocoee were met with a clear message: leave or die, and they left. All of them. Within a year, the entire black population of Ocoee was gone. The 1920 census recorded 255 black residents in Ocoee. The 1930 census recorded 2. An entire community. Erased. For one man trying to vote. Now, I need to tell you something that's going to make you angry. Actually, let me rephrase that. I need to tell you something that should make you furious. Because what happened in Ocoee wasn't unique. It wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't one town having one bad night. This was the pattern. This was the policy. This was America. Every single time black people built wealth, they destroyed it. Every single time black people organized politically, they murdered them. Every single time black people tried to vote, they burned them out. This happened over and over and over again. And they erased every single story from the history books. Let me show you the pattern. Let me show you that Ocoee was just one chapter in a much larger book of American terrorism. 3 years after Ocoee, in 1923, it happened again. Rosewood, Florida, just a few hundred miles south. Another prosperous black town. Families who owned land and businesses. A community that had everything they needed. On January 1st, 1923, a white woman in the nearby town of Sumner claimed a black man had attacked her. She was lying. Her husband had beaten her, and she made up the story to cover the bruises. But the truth didn't matter. A white mob formed. They went to Rosewood hunting for the man she described. They couldn't find him, so they killed everyone else instead. They went house to house. They shot black men in front of their families. They burned every building. The school, the churches, the Masonic Lodge, the general store, the houses, everything. Between 6 and 150 black people were killed. Again, we don't know the exact number. Again, they didn't count. Again, they didn't investigate. The survivors fled into the swamps just like in Ocoee. Mothers carrying children through water and darkness. Families separated forever. An entire town erased. And here's what connects Rosewood to Ocoee. The same method. Burn the buildings, destroy the records, kill the witnesses. Make sure no one can prove they ever owned anything. By 1925, Rosewood was gone. The land was sold to white developers for pennies. The families got nothing. No compensation. No justice. Just trauma and poverty. Florida did this twice in 3 years. 2 entire black towns. Hundreds of people murdered. Thousands displaced. Millions of dollars in property stolen. And they taught you none of it in school. But let's go back further, because Ocoee wasn't even the first, not by a long shot. Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898, 22 years before Ocoee. Wilmington was a majority black city. Black people held political office there. The mayor was white, but the aldermen, the magistrates, many positions of power were held by black men. The city had black-owned newspapers, banks, businesses. It was proof that black political power could work, that black people could govern themselves and their white neighbors just fine. White supremacists couldn't stand it. In the 1898 election, black candidates were winning. Black voters were showing up in huge numbers. So white Democratic leaders planned a coup, an actual coup, the only successful overthrow of an elected government in American history. On November 10, 1898, 2 days after the election, a mob of white men, including the former Confederate soldiers, armed themselves. They had a list of every black elected official, every black business owner, every black leader. They went to the office of the black-owned newspaper, The Daily Record. They destroyed the printing press, burned the building. Then they went hunting for the editor, Alex Manley. He escaped, but dozens of others didn't. The mob went through Wilmington, killing any black person they saw. Men, women, children. They shot people in the streets. They dragged people out of their homes and executed them. They threw bodies into the river. The death toll. Officially, the white-controlled government said 14 died. But eyewitness accounts and later research suggest between 60 and 300 black people were murdered that day. Every single black elected official was forced to resign at gunpoint. They were put on trains and told never to come back. The white mob installed their own government. They literally overthrew democracy. And what did the federal government do? Nothing. What did the state government do? Nothing. What did the newspapers do? They called it a race riot. They said black people had started the violence. They blamed the victims. More than 2,000 black residents fled Wilmington. The black population dropped by half almost overnight. Black-owned businesses were seized by white people. Property was stolen. Wealth was transferred from black hands to white hands at gunpoint. And it was legal, or at least no one was ever prosecuted. Do you see the pattern now? Wilmington, 1898. Ocoee, 1920. Rosewood, 1923. Same script, different actors, same results. But there's more. So much more. Atlanta, Georgia. 1906. A gubernatorial election where candidates competed over who hated black people more. Newspapers published fake stories about black men attacking white women. They did this deliberately to inflame white voters. After the election, a white mob rampaged through Atlanta for 4 days. They pulled black people off streetcars and beat them to death. They invaded black neighborhoods. They burned businesses. They killed between 25 and 100 black people. The police didn't stop them. The police helped them. And when black people in the Brownsville neighborhood armed themselves to defend their homes, the state militia was called in. Not to stop the white mob, to disarm the black defenders, to make sure black people couldn't protect themselves. East St. Louis, Illinois, 1917. Black workers had been brought in to work in factories during World War I. White workers saw them as competition. Union leaders spread rumors that black people were taking white jobs. The newspapers amplified the lies. On July 5, 1917, a white mob attacked the black section of East St. Louis. They set fire to black homes with families still inside. They shot people as they ran from the flames. They beat children to death. They lynched men from streetlights. The death toll officially 39 black people. But eyewitnesses said hundreds died. Bodies were thrown into the river. Bodies were buried in mass graves. Bodies were burned beyond recognition. 6,000 black residents were left homeless. They fled to other cities carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs. Everything they'd built was gone. And here's what makes this one especially sick. This happened in Illinois, not the Deep South. Illinois, the land of Lincoln, the state that supposedly freed the slaves. Even there, white supremacy would rather murder than compete. Elaine, Arkansas, 1919. Black sharecroppers organized a union. They wanted fair wages. They wanted to be paid what they were owed instead of being cheated with Jim Crow accounting. They met in a church to discuss their demands. White plantation owners heard about the meeting. They sent armed men to break it up. When the black farmers defended themselves, the planters called it an insurrection. For 3 days, white mobs hunted black people through the Arkansas Delta. Federal troops were called in not to protect black people, but to round them up. Hundreds of black people were arrested. At least 100 were killed, though some estimates go as high as 240. 12 black men were sentenced to death for defending themselves. It took years of legal battles to free them. The white men who'd done the actual killing, not one arrest. Every one of these massacres followed the same pattern. Black success, or black political organizing, triggered white violence. The violence was massive and organized. The police either participated or stood aside. The media blamed black people. No one was prosecuted. Black property was stolen, and the whole thing was erased from history. They did this in Phoenix, South Carolina in 1898. 13 black people killed for trying to vote. They did this in Springfield, Illinois in 1908. The city where Abraham Lincoln lived. 2 black men were lynched. The entire black population was driven out. They did this in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921, the single wealthiest black community in America. 35 city blocks destroyed, 300 people killed, 10,000 left homeless. Not one arrest. They did this in Washington, D.C. in 1919. The nation's capital. White mobs, including off-duty police and soldiers, attacked black neighborhoods for 4 days. They did this in Chicago in 1919. 38 people killed. 1,000 black families left homeless. They did this in Beaumont, Texas in 1943. They did this in Detroit in 1943. They did this in Columbia, Tennessee in 1946. They did this in Moores Ford, Georgia in 1946. Over and over and over again. Different cities, different years. Same pattern, same script, same result. Black people build something. White supremacy destroys it. The government does nothing. History erases it. And here's what you need to understand. This wasn't random violence. This wasn't individuals acting out of personal hatred. This was coordinated. This was systematic. This was policy. In many of these cases, white civic leaders organized the violence. Businessmen, elected officials, police chiefs, newspaper editors, respected members of the community. They planned these attacks. They recruited the mobs. They provided the weapons. They made sure no one would be prosecuted. This was terrorism. State-sponsored terrorism designed to keep black people economically dependent and politically powerless. Every time black people got close to real power, real wealth, real independence, white supremacy responded with overwhelming violence. And every time they got away with it, because the system wasn't broken. The system was doing exactly what it was designed to do. Think about what this means. Think about what they stole. In Tulsa alone, they destroyed 35 city blocks of black-owned businesses, grocery stores, hotels, theaters, newspapers, law offices, doctors' offices, a hospital, a library, 13 churches, more than 1,000 homes. The property damage in 1921 dollars was estimated at $1.5 million. In today's money, that's about $32 million. But that doesn't capture the real loss, because those businesses would have kept operating, would have kept generating wealth, would have been passed down to children and grandchildren, would have created generational wealth for thousands of black families. If Tulsa hadn't been destroyed, those families would be millionaires today. Multi-millionaires. The compound interest alone over 100 years would be staggering. Multiply that by Ocoee, by Rosewood, by Wilmington, by East St. Louis, by Elaine, by dozens of other massacres that we don't even have names for because they were so thoroughly erased. Historians estimate that between $1.5 and $4.5 trillion in wealth was stolen from Black communities through massacres, land theft, discriminatory policies, and wage theft during Jim Crow. Not million, trillion. With a T, that's your inheritance. That's what they stole from you. That's why there's a wealth gap. Not because your grandparents didn't work hard. Not because they didn't save. Not because they didn't build businesses. Because every time they did, white supremacy burned it down and took it. And then they had the audacity to ask why Black people don't have generational wealth. Now let me show you how they made sure you'd never know about any of this. Let me show you the cover-up. Because the cover-up is almost as evil as the crime. They didn't just kill people and steal property. They erased the evidence. They rewrote the history. They made sure that even if you went looking for the truth, you wouldn't find it. Let's start with the physical destruction, the immediate erasure. In Ocoee, when they burned those churches, they weren't just burning buildings. Churches in Black communities held records, birth certificates, marriage licenses, property deeds, proof that people existed, proof that they owned things. When Mount Zion Baptist Church burned, decades of community records burned with it. Families lost proof of their marriages, lost proof that their children had been born, lost proof that they'd bought land legally. When the Fraternal Lodge burned, business records burned, loan documents, partnership agreements, property titles. This wasn't collateral damage. This was intentional. Because here's what happened next. Black families who'd fled Ocoee tried to come back in the following months, tried to reclaim their property, and they were told, "Prove you own it. Show us the deed. Show us the title. Show us the paperwork." And they couldn't, because it was ashes. So white people claimed the land, filed new deeds, took ownership of property that Black families had paid for with decades of labor. And it was legal. Or at least no court would challenge it. The same thing happened in Rosewood, in Tulsa, in Wilmington, everywhere. Burn the records, steal the land, profit. But the physical destruction was just the beginning. They also destroyed the bodies, made sure no one could count the dead. In Ocoee, they never searched the swamps, never dredged Lake Apopka, never looked for the people who disappeared that night. Some survivors reported seeing bodies floating in the lake days later, reported finding bodies in the woods weeks later. But there was no official search, no investigation, no count. Well, because if they counted the bodies, they'd have to admit how many people had been killed. They'd have to admit it was a massacre. They'd have to prosecute someone. So they just didn't count. In Tulsa, mass graves weren't discovered until the year 2000. 79 years later, they found bodies buried in unmarked graves around the city. They're still finding them, still digging them up, still trying to figure out who they were. In Rosewood, no one knows where the bodies are. They were buried in the swamps, thrown in the rivers, hidden in the woods, scattered across the landscape like they didn't matter. Because to the people who killed them, they didn't. But erasing the physical evidence was only half the job. They also had to control the legal system, make sure no one was ever prosecuted, make sure justice was impossible. In Ocoee, how many people were arrested for murder? 0. How many were arrested for arson? 0. How many were arrested for assault, for terrorism, for destroying an entire community? 0. Not because they didn't know who did it. Everyone knew. The mob wasn't hiding. They were proud. They bragged about it. Some of them took photographs, posed with the burned buildings like hunters with a kill. But the sheriff didn't arrest anyone. The district attorney didn't charge anyone. The governor didn't order an investigation. Because they were all part of the same system. Many of them probably knew people in the mob. Maybe were related to them. Maybe owed them favors. Maybe agreed with them. The law wasn't there to protect black people. The law was there to protect white supremacy. And when black people tried to use the legal system to get justice, the system blocked them at every turn. After the Tulsa Massacre, black survivors tried to sue for compensation, tried to get insurance companies to pay out for their destroyed homes and businesses. The insurance companies refused. They said the policies didn't cover riots, even though it wasn't a riot, even though it was white people who'd done the destroying. The survivors appealed. The courts sided with the insurance companies. They tried to sue the city, tried to hold Tulsa accountable for failing to protect them, for actively helping the mob. The courts dismissed the case, said there was no legal basis, said too much time had passed, said the victims couldn't prove damages. Every door closed, every avenue blocked, justice denied. The same thing happened after Rosewood, after Wilmington, after East St. Louis, after every massacre. The legal system that was supposed to provide justice became a weapon to deny it. But here's where it gets really insidious. They didn't just use the legal system to deny justice in the present. They used it to prevent justice in the future. In Ocoee, after the massacre, white civic leaders passed a new ordinance. It wasn't written explicitly, but everyone understood it. Black people were not allowed to live in Ocoee after dark. If you were black and you were found in Ocoee after sunset, you'd be arrested. Or worse, this was an official policy. It wasn't written in any law book, but it was enforced. By the police, by the courts, by white residents who would call the sheriff if they saw a black person after dark. Ocoee became what's called a sundown town, and it stayed that way for 60 years. 60 years. 3 generations. An entire lineage of black families banned from the town their grandparents had built. And here's the cruelest part. Because black people couldn't return, because they couldn't reclaim their property, the statute of limitations ran out. After a certain number of years, you can't sue for property theft anymore. The law says too much time has passed. So by the time it was safe for black people to come back, by the time the Civil Rights Act made explicit racial bans illegal, it was too late to reclaim what had been stolen. They used time itself as a weapon. Wait long enough, and the theft becomes permanent. But the physical destruction and legal suppression weren't enough. They also had to control the narrative. They had to make sure that even if people heard about these events, they'd hear the wrong story. Enter the media. Enter the newspapers. Enter the history books. Let's look at how the newspapers covered Ocoee in 1920. The Orlando Morning Sentinel, the major newspaper in the area, ran the story on November 3rd. Here's what the headline said. Negro uprising quelled in Ocoee. 2 white men dead. Negro uprising. Not white terrorism. Not massacre. Uprising. As if black people had attacked. As if black people had started the violence. The article described July Perry as a dangerous agitator. Said he'd fired on white men who were simply trying to maintain order. Said Mose Norman had assaulted poll workers. All lies. But the lies were printed in the newspaper, in black and white, with the authority of the press behind them. And those lies became the official record, became what people believed, became the story that was passed down. Other newspapers across Florida picked up the story. They all used the same language. Riot. Uprising. Negro violence. White self-defense. Not one newspaper called it what it was. A massacre. A pogrom. Ethnic cleansing. Terrorism. The white reporters either believed the lies or chose to print them anyway. Either way, the result was the same. The truth was buried. The lie became history. This happened after every massacre. The newspapers blamed black people for their own destruction. After Tulsa newspapers said black people had attacked the courthouse, said they'd tried to lynch a white man, said white people had defended themselves, all lies. After Wilmington newspapers said black people had planned to take over the government, said they'd armed themselves for war, said white people had stopped a Negro insurrection, all lies. The pattern was always the same: white violence, black victims, media blaming black people. And those newspaper articles became the first draft of history, became what was written in history textbooks, became what was taught in schools. Which brings us to the educational erasure, the final stage of the cover-up. For 75 years, the Ocoee Massacre was not taught in Florida schools, not mentioned in textbooks, not included in the curriculum. 3 generations of Florida students, black and white, graduated high school without ever hearing about it. Teachers didn't know. Professors didn't know. Or if they knew, they didn't teach it. Why? Because the textbooks were written by white historians who either didn't consider black history important enough to include or actively wanted to hide it. School boards in the South were controlled by white officials who had no interest in teaching students about white terrorism. That would complicate the narrative they wanted to tell. The narrative where the South was the victim of Northern aggression, where the Civil War was about states' rights, not slavery, where Jim Crow was separate, but equal, not oppression. Teaching students about Ocoee, about Tulsa, about Rosewood would undermine all of that, would force white students to confront the fact that their grandparents might have been part of a genocide, would force them to ask uncomfortable questions about where their family's land came from, where their family's wealth came from. So they just didn't teach it. And when black students or black parents asked why, they were told it wasn't relevant, or it wasn't historically significant enough, or there wasn't enough documentation. All lies. The same thing happened in Oklahoma with the Tulsa Massacre. Not taught in schools for 75 years. Not until the year 2000 did Oklahoma finally require it to be in the curriculum. 75 years of students graduating without knowing that the single wealthiest black community in America had been destroyed in their own state. In North Carolina, the Wilmington Massacre wasn't taught until the 1990s. 100 years of silence. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't an oversight. This was deliberate erasure. Because here's what they understood. If people don't know history, they can't learn from it. They can't demand justice for it. They can't seek reparations for it. If you don't know that your great-grandfather owned 40 acres of prime land in Ocoee, you can't sue to get it back. If you don't know that your great-grandmother owned a business in Tulsa, you can't demand compensation. If you don't know that wealth was stolen, you can't reclaim it. Ignorance protects theft. Amnesia enables injustice. And they knew that. So they made sure you'd forget. Made sure your parents would forget. Made sure your grandparents would be too afraid to tell you. Even when survivors wanted to talk, they were silenced. After Ocoee black survivors who'd fled to other towns were warned not to speak about what happened. White people in those towns made it clear, if you talk about Ocoee, the same thing will happen to you. So they stayed silent. They whispered the stories to their children in private, passed them down in oral history. But they didn't speak publicly, didn't testify, didn't demand justice, because they were terrified, and rightfully so. In 1921, a few months after the massacre, a black man named George Betsy was found beaten nearly to death in Winter Garden, Florida, just a few miles from Ocoee. His crime talking too much about the trouble at Ocoee last November. That's a direct quote from the sheriff's report. He'd been talking about what happened, about what he'd seen, about who'd been killed. So they beat him, tied him to a light post, left him there as a warning to anyone else who might talk. That's how they enforced the silence, with violence, with terror. And it worked. For decades it worked. But here's the thing about truth. You can bury it. You can burn it. You can beat people who speak it. But you can't kill it. Truth has a way of rising, of finding cracks in the lies, of forcing itself back into the light. And that's what's happening now. 100 years later, The truth about Ocoee is finally being told. The truth about Tulsa. The truth about Rosewood. The truth about all of it. Historians are digging through archives, finding documents, interviewing the last remaining descendants of survivors, excavating mass graves, reconstructing what happened. And they're proving what Black people have been saying all along. It happened. It was worse than anyone admitted, and it was covered up deliberately. In 2018, the city of Ocoee finally erected a historical marker acknowledging the massacre. 98 years later. In 2020, on the 100th anniversary, there was a memorial service. Descendants of survivors came. The mayor apologized. The city acknowledged its history. Too late for the people who died. Too late for the people who lost everything. But not too late for their descendants to finally be heard, to finally be believed, to finally demand justice. Because that's what this is about. Justice. Not revenge, not hatred. Justice. Now let me show you why this matters today. Right now, in 2025. In your life, because some of you are thinking, okay, that's terrible, but it was 100 years ago. Why are we still talking about this? Let me tell you exactly why. Because the theft didn't end in 1920. The system didn't change. They just changed the methods. They can't lynch you anymore. Not openly. Not without consequence. So they found new ways to do the same thing. New ways to steal your vote. New ways to steal your wealth. New ways to keep you powerless. And if you don't understand Ocoee, if you don't understand the pattern, you can't see what's happening right now. Let's start with voting, because that's where this whole story began, with one man trying to vote. In 1920, they stopped Mose Norman from voting with a poll tax and violence. In 2025, they're still stopping you from voting. They just use different tools. Let me show you the direct line from then to now. After the 15th Amendment gave Black men the right to vote in 1870, Southern states immediately started finding ways around it. Poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses, property requirements. These laws stayed on the books for almost 100 years. It wasn't until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that they were finally struck down. 95 years of legal voter suppression. But here's what happened next. The moment the Voting Rights Act passed, Southern states started looking for new ways to suppress Black votes. They couldn't use poll taxes anymore, couldn't use literacy tests, so they got creative. Voter ID laws. Sounds reasonable, right? You should have to prove who you are to vote. Except these laws were designed to target Black voters specifically. In North Carolina, in 2013, the state legislature requested data on voting patterns by race. They wanted to know how Black people voted, what forms of ID they had, what times they voted, where they voted. Then they passed a voter ID law that, according to the federal court that struck it down, targeted Black voters with almost surgical precision. They eliminated the forms of ID that Black people were most likely to have. They cut early voting during the times when Black people were most likely to vote. They eliminated same-day registration that Black voters used most. The court literally said, the law targeted Black voters with surgical precision. Those were the words used by a federal judge. That was 2013, not 1920. 2013. And it's still happening. Right now, in 2025, polling place closures. Since the Supreme Court weakened the Voting Rights Act in 2013, more than 3,000 polling places have been closed across the country. Guess which neighborhoods lost the most polling places? Black neighborhoods, Latino neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods. In Georgia, they closed polling places in majority Black counties. In Texas, they closed polling places in majority Black precincts. In Arizona, in Wisconsin, and North Carolina, the pattern is the same. Close the polling places in Black neighborhoods, Make people drive farther. Make them wait longer. Make voting as inconvenient and difficult as possible. In 2020, the average wait time to vote in a black neighborhood was 29 minutes. In white neighborhoods, 6 minutes. Some black voters in Georgia waited in line for 8 hours. 8 hours. Standing in the heat. Missing work. Missing school pickup. Some people gave up and went home without voting. That's voter suppression. That's the modern version of what they did to Mose Norman. They're not telling you that you can't vote. They're just making it so hard that many people won't. Voter roll purges. States are removing people from voter registration lists at record rates. They say it's to clean up outdated records. But somehow, black voters get purged at much higher rates than white voters. In 2018, Georgia purged 534,000 people from the voter rolls. 70% of them were black. Many of them showed up on election day and were told they weren't registered, weren't allowed to vote. In Florida, in Ohio, in Wisconsin, the same thing. Purge the rolls. Remove black voters. Make them re-register. Hope they don't. Felony disenfranchisement. This is the modern poll tax. 48 states have laws that prevent people with felony convictions from voting either permanently or temporarily. In Florida alone, 1.5 million people can't vote because of felony convictions. Disproportionately, black people. Because the criminal justice system disproportionately arrests convicts and sentences black people. In 2018, Florida voters passed Amendment 4, which restored voting rights to people with felony convictions who'd completed their sentences. The people voted for it. 64% said yes. Then the Florida legislature said, okay, but first they have to pay all their court fees and fines, which for many people amounts to thousands of dollars. So it became a poll tax. You can vote, but first you have to pay. Just like 1920. And if you can't afford to pay, you can't vote. Just like Ocoee. Do you see it now? Do you see the direct line? They can't stop you from voting with violence anymore. So they stop you with bureaucracy, with inconvenience, with fees, with closed polling places, with purged voter rolls, with ID requirements, different methods, same goal. Keep black people away from the ballot box. Because they learned from Ocoee. They learned that if black people vote, black people have power. And if black people have power, they can change the system, can elect people who will enforce the law equally, can pass policies that benefit their communities, can demand what's owed. And white supremacy can't allow that. So they keep finding new ways to stop it. Mose Norman tried to vote in 1920 and it cost 60 lives. In 2025, you try to vote and it cost you 8 hours in line. A day of lost wages, a purged registration, a felony conviction from 20 years ago. They changed the weapon, but they're still fighting the same war. Now let's talk about the wealth gap, because this is where the theft becomes crystal clear. The median wealth of a white household in America is $188,000. The median wealth of a black household is $24,000. That's not a typo. White households have almost 8 times more wealth than black households. And they want you to believe that's because black people don't work hard, don't save, don't make good financial decisions. That's a lie. And Ocoee proves it. Mose Norman was a prosperous farmer. He owned land in what is now one of the most expensive real estate markets in Florida, Central Florida, Orlando metro area. If his family had been allowed to keep that land, if they hadn't been driven out at gunpoint, if they hadn't lost everything, that land would be worth millions today. Millions, not thousands. Millions. July Perry owned property, a successful farm, a home. He was one of the wealthiest black men in Ocoee. If his children had inherited that property, if his grandchildren had been able to build on that wealth. If compound interest and property appreciation had been allowed to work over 100 years. His descendants would be millionaires today. Instead, they got nothing, because it was stolen. And that's the story of every black family whose ancestors lived through these massacres. Ocoee, Tulsa, Rosewood, Wilmington, East St. Louis. All of them. Generational wealth was stolen. And then they asked why you don't have generational wealth. Let me break down the math for you, because numbers don't lie. In 1920, the average value of a black-owned home in a prosperous community like Ocoee was about $3,000. In today's money, that's about $45,000. But that's not the real value, because real estate appreciates. In Central Florida, property values have increased by an average of 6% per year over the last 100 years. If that $3,000 home had stayed in the family, if it had been passed down and maintained, if the family had been able to use it as collateral for loans for business investments for education, that property would be worth over $200,000 today, just from appreciation alone. But most families didn't just own homes. They owned land, farmland, commercial property. July Perry owned multiple properties. If his estate had been valued at $10,000 in 1920, which is a conservative estimate for a wealthy black landowner, that would be worth over $6 million today. $6 million. That's the inheritance that was stolen from his descendants. That's what they're owed. Now multiply that by every family in Ocoee. 255 people. Let's say 50 families. 50 families who lost an average of $5,000 in property and assets. That's $250,000 in 1920 money. About $37 million in today's money. But again, that's just the initial value. Over 100 years with compound interest with property appreciation. With the ability to use that wealth to generate more wealth, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. Stolen. From one small town, in one night. Now multiply that by Tulsa. 35 city blocks, over 1,000 black-owned homes and businesses. Initial property damage estimated at $1.5 million in 1921. That's about $32 million today. But the real cost, the generational wealth that was destroyed, is in the billions. Multiply that by Rosewood, by Wilmington, by East St. Louis, by dozens of other massacres and land thefts. Economists have calculated that between $1.5 trillion and $4.5 trillion in wealth was stolen from black communities through massacres, discriminatory policies, redlining, wage theft, and land theft during the Jim Crow era. Trillion, with a T, and they never paid it back, never compensated the victims, never restored the stolen property. Then they look at the wealth gap and say, well, black people just need to work harder, need to save more, need to be more financially responsible. No, black people need to be paid what they're owed. Black people need the stolen wealth returned, with interest. That's not a handout. That's not a favor. That's a debt that's been owed for over 100 years. And every day they don't pay it, the interest grows. But the theft didn't stop in 1920. It continued. They found new ways. Redlining. From the 1930s through the 1960s, the federal government literally drew red lines on maps around black neighborhoods. Banks were told not to give mortgages to people in those neighborhoods. Black families couldn't get loans to buy homes, couldn't build equity, couldn't accumulate wealth. Meanwhile, white families were getting federally backed mortgages, were buying homes in the suburbs, were building wealth through property ownership. By the time redlining was made illegal in 1968, white families had built trillions of dollars in housing wealth. Black families had been locked out. That wealth gap you see today, that's not ancient history. That's your parents' lifetime, your grandparents' lifetime. Urban renewal. In the 1950s and 60s, cities across America decided to modernize. They built highways, built stadiums, built government complexes. And where did they build them? Right through black neighborhoods. They called it urban renewal. Black people called it Negro removal. Thriving black business districts were demolished for highways. Black homes were torn down for parking lots. Entire communities were destroyed. And the families got pennies on the dollar for their property, or nothing at all. In Atlanta, they built I-75 right through Sweet Auburn, the heart of black Atlanta. In Detroit, they demolished Black Bottom, one of the largest black communities in the North. In New York, they tore down Seneca Village to build Central Park. Every major city has a story like this. A black neighborhood that used to be there, used to thrive, until the city decided it needed that land for something else. And now those neighborhoods are gone. The wealth is gone. The businesses are gone. But the descendants are still there. Still poor. Still struggling. Still being told they just need to work harder. Gentrification. That's the modern version. They don't burn your neighborhood anymore. They price you out. Black neighborhoods that were ignored for decades are suddenly desirable. White people move in. Coffee shops open. Property values skyrocket. Property taxes go up. Rents go up. And black families who lived there for generations can't afford it anymore. They have to move, have to leave the neighborhood their grandparents built. And white people buy the property for a fraction of what it would be worth if the neighborhood had been invested in all along, if the schools had been funded, if the infrastructure had been maintained, if the police had actually protected instead of harassed. It's the same pattern. Wait until black people build something. Wait until it has value, then take it. Ocoee, 1920, was theft with torches. Gentrification 20 out and 25 is theft with cappuccinos. Different method, same result. And then there's mass incarceration, the modern version of slavery. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, except as punishment for a crime. That exception is the loophole they've been exploiting ever since. After Reconstruction ended, Southern states passed black codes, laws that criminalize normal behavior, but only when black people did it. Vagrancy, loitering, not having a job, talking back to a white person. Black people were arrested for these made-up crimes. Then they were sentenced to labor on chain gangs, or leased out to plantations, or forced to work in mines. It was slavery, just with a different name. That system evolved. The laws got more subtle, but the goal stayed the same. Criminalize black people. Lock them up. Extract their labor. The war on drugs. Starting in the 1970s, the federal government declared war on drugs. Sounds noble, right? Get drugs off the streets. Protect communities. Except the war was designed to target black communities specifically. John Ehrlichman, one of President Nixon's top advisors, admitted it years later. He said, and this is a direct quote, "We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be black, but by getting the public to associate black people with drugs, we could disrupt black communities, arrest black leaders, and vilify black people." That's a confession from a government official, that the war on drugs was designed to target black people, and it worked. From 1980 to 2000, the prison population exploded, went from 500,000 to 2 million. Most of the increase was black men being sentenced for drug crimes. Even though black people and white people use drugs at the same rates, black people are 6 times more likely to be arrested for it, 10 times more likely to be sentenced to prison for it. And once you have a felony conviction, you can't vote, can't get a good job, can't get housing, can't get financial aid for college. You're marked for life, locked out of society, made into a permanent underclass. Just like Jim Crow, just like the Black Codes, just like slavery. They changed the name, but the system stayed the same. And here's the connection to Ocoee. In 1920, they controlled black people with violence, with terror, with massacres. In 2025, they control black people with prisons, with police, with the threat of incarceration. July Perry defended his home with a rifle. Today, if a black man defends his home with a rifle, he's arrested, charged, sentenced, even if he was protecting himself, even if he was within his rights, because the system only recognizes self-defense when white people do it. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend shot at intruders breaking into their home in the middle of the night. Turns out they were police, executing a no-knock warrant at the wrong address. He shot in self-defense. He was charged with attempted murder of a police officer. Breonna Taylor was killed, shot 6 times, in her own home, in her own bed. No one was charged with her murder, not one officer. Just like Ocoee, just like July Perry. Defend yourself while black and you're the criminal. The system hasn't changed. They just made it look more official, made it look legal, made it look like justice. But it's the same violence, the same oppression, the same theft. And the same people who benefit from it want you to think it's your fault. Want you to think that if you just obeyed the law, just complied, just worked harder, just made better choices, everything would be fine. That's a lie. Your ancestors made all the right choices, bought land legally, built businesses, paid their taxes, registered to vote, followed the law, and they still lost everything, still got killed, still got robbed, because the system wasn't designed to reward good choices. It was designed to steal from you, no matter what you did. And it's still stealing. Every day. Every time a polling place closes in a black neighborhood, that's theft. Theft of your voice. Theft of your power. Every time property taxes force a black family out of the neighborhood they built, that's theft. Theft of your home. Theft of your wealth. Every time a black man goes to prison for something a white man gets probation for, that's theft. Theft of his freedom. Theft of his future. Theft of his family's stability. The theft is ongoing. The massacre never ended. They just made it slower, made it quieter, made it look like your fault. But it's not your fault. And you need to stop accepting the lie that it is. Your poverty is not your failure. Your poverty is their theft. Your struggle is not your weakness. Your struggle is their oppression. Your pain is not your destiny. Your pain is their crime. And it's time to demand what's owed. Reparations. That's not a dirty word. That's not a handout. That's justice. When someone steals from you, they owe you. They owe you the value of what they stole, plus interest, plus compensation for all the years you went without it. Black people are owed. For slavery, for Jim Crow, for the massacres, for the land theft, for redlining, for mass incarceration, for all of it. The debt is real. The bill is due. And it's time to collect. They'll say it's too expensive, that the country can't afford it, that it's not fair to make people today pay for what happened generations ago. All lies. The country found trillions of dollars to bail out banks in 2008. Found trillions to fight wars in the Middle East. Found trillions for tax cuts for billionaires. The money exists. The question is whether they value justice enough to spend it. And as for making people today pay for what happened generations ago, let me ask you this. Are you still poor today because of what happened generations ago? Yes. Then they're still rich today because of what they stole generations ago. The wealth didn't disappear. It just changed hands. From black families to white families. From Ocoee residents to white Orlando developers. From Tulsa millionaires to white Oklahoma businessmen. The wealth is still there. It's just in the wrong hands. Reparations would simply return it to the rightful owners. That's not punishment. That's not revenge. That's restoration. And anyone who says otherwise is protecting theft, is benefiting from theft, is profiting from your ancestors' blood. Don't let them shame you for demanding what's yours. Don't let them guilt you for wanting justice. Don't let them convince you that you're asking for too much. You're not asking for anything. You're demanding what's owed. And you have every right to demand it, too, because Mose Norman demanded his right to vote. And they killed 60 people for it. Because July Perry demanded his right to defend his home. And they lynched him for it. Because your ancestors demanded dignity, demanded equality, demanded justice. And they were murdered for it. The least you can do is continue the demand, continue the fight, continue the struggle for what's owed. Not for yourself alone, for them, for the ancestors who died so you could be here, who suffered so you could be free, who built so you could inherit. They're owed, and through you, they will collect. Now I need to tell you something important, something that's going to shift how you see yourself. You are not a victim. I know I just spent the last hour telling you about violence and theft and oppression, about massacres and stolen wealth and ongoing injustice. But you need to understand something. Your ancestors were not helpless victims, and neither are you. You are a survivor. You are a descendant of survivors. You are the genetic legacy of people who endured hell and kept living, kept fighting, kept building. Think about what your ancestors survived. Really think about it. They survived the Middle Passage, months in the hull of a slave ship, chained, starving, watching people die next to them and be thrown overboard like garbage. 20% didn't make it. Your ancestors did. They survived slavery. Centuries of it. Generations born into bondage. Families torn apart. Bodies brutalized. Spirits tested. And they survived. Kept their humanity. Kept their culture. Kept their faith. They survived the Civil War. Fought in it. Died in it. And when it was over, they built. Built families. Built communities. Built schools and churches and businesses from nothing. They survived Reconstruction, that brief window when they had power, had rights, had hope. They got elected to office, bought land, started businesses, built the foundation for generational wealth. And then they survived the backlash. They survived Jim Crow, survived the KKK, survived lynchings and massacres, and having everything they built burned down. Survived Ocoee, survived Tulsa, survived Rosewood, survived Wilmington. Your ancestors ran through swamps with babies on their backs, ran from burning homes, ran from lynch mobs, and they survived. They survived the Great Migration, left everything familiar, traveled north to cities where they weren't welcome, started over, again, built new communities, new churches, new businesses. They survived redlining, survived urban renewal, survived being locked out of the wealth that other Americans were building. And they still found ways to thrive, still found ways to create, still found ways to be excellent despite every barrier. They survived the war on drugs, survived crack flooding their neighborhoods, survived seeing their sons and brothers and fathers locked up for decades. And they kept families together anyway, kept communities alive anyway. They survived police brutality, survived being killed for traffic stops, for selling loose cigarettes, for sleeping in their own beds. And they kept demanding justice anyway. They survived COVID, died at 3 times the rate of white people because of systemic healthcare disparities, lost jobs, lost homes, and they kept going. And because they survived all of that, you're here. You exist because your ancestors refused to die, refused to give up, refused to let white supremacy win. That's your inheritance. not the wealth they stole from you. That's owed to you, but it's not your inheritance. Your inheritance is strength, resilience, an unbreakable will to survive, an unshakable faith in tomorrow. That's in your DNA. That's in your blood. That's who you are. So when you feel weak, remember you come from people who survived the unsurvivable. When you feel poor, remember you come from people who built empires from nothing. Twice. 3 times. As many times as necessary. When you feel powerless, remember you come from people who scared white supremacy so much they had to destroy entire towns to stop them. You come from Mose Norman, who walked into a hostile polling place twice in one day because he knew his vote mattered more than his safety. You come from July Perry, who stood in his doorway with a rifle and said you're not taking him, who chose honor over survival, who chose principle over compromise. You come from the mothers who carried babies through swamps, who chose their children's lives over their own comfort, who ran barefoot through darkness and terror and survived. You come from people who were millionaires before white people burned their wealth to ash. People who owned land before white people stole it at gunpoint. People who built schools and churches and businesses before white people destroyed them. Your ancestors weren't poor. They were robbed. Your ancestors weren't weak. They were terrorized. Your ancestors weren't failures. They were sabotaged. And you need to stop carrying the shame of poverty that was inflicted on you. Stop internalizing the lie that you're less than. Stop believing that your struggle is your fault. It's not. Your struggle is the evidence of their crime. Your poverty is the proof of their theft. Your pain is the receipt for their debt. And instead of being ashamed, you should be furious. Should be demanding. Should be uncompromising in your pursuit of justice. Because you're not asking for charity. You're demanding what's yours. You're not begging for equality. You're taking back what was stolen. You're not hoping for change. You're creating it. And here's what I need you to understand. God preserved you for a reason. Think about the odds. The astronomical, impossible odds that you exist. Your ancestors had to survive the Middle Passage, had to survive slavery, had to survive Jim Crow, had to survive massacres and lynchings, and every attempt to exterminate them. At any point, if any one of your ancestors had died, you wouldn't be here. If the slave ship had sunk, if they'd been sold to a different plantation, if they'd been in Ocoee on November 2nd, 1920 instead of somewhere else, you wouldn't exist. But they survived, against all odds, against every attempt to kill them. They survived. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's divine protection. God kept them alive through hell. Why so? You could be here, right now, at this moment in history, learning this truth. You think it's an accident that you're watching this video, that you're hearing this story, that you're learning about Ocoee and Tulsa and all the stolen history. It's not an accident. This is your divine appointment. You were meant to know this. You were meant to wake up. You were meant to understand what was stolen and demand it back. Your ancestors survived so you could be the generation that breaks the curse. That ends the cycle. That reclaims the inheritance. God didn't bring your family through 400 years of hell so you could stay quiet, so you could accept injustice, so you could be grateful for scraps. God brought your family through 400 years of hell so you could roar, so you could demand, so you could take back everything that's yours. The Bible says, "The wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous." That wealth they stole from you, it's still there. And God is going to transfer it back. But not if you stay silent. Not if you accept the lies. Not if you let them keep telling you that it was all your fault. You have to speak up. You have to demand. You have to fight. Not with violence, not with hatred, but with truth, with persistence, with unshakable faith that justice will prevail. Because it will. It has to. Because God is just. And what was stolen will be restored. The land in Ocoee will be returned. The wealth from Tulsa will be repaid. The debt from 400 years of theft will be collected. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it's coming. And you need to be ready. Ready to receive what's yours. Ready to steward it properly. Ready to pass it down to your children and grandchildren so they never have to start from nothing again. That's your purpose. That's why you're here. That's why God preserved your family line through every attempt to destroy it. Not so you could survive, so you could thrive, so you could reclaim, so you could restore. And it starts with knowing the truth, with rejecting the lies, with understanding that your poverty is not your identity, your struggle is not your destiny, your pain is not your future. Your future is wealth, justice, restoration, power. Your future is taking back what's yours and building something so strong that no one can ever take it again. That's who you are. That's what you're here for. And it's time to walk in it. So here's what I need you to do right now. If this truth has shaken you, if this history has opened your eyes, if you're feeling anger and pride and determination all at the same time, drop a comment below, just one word. OCOE. Let me see who's awake. Let me see who's ready. Let me see who's going to carry this truth forward. And hit that like button, not for me, for Mose Norman, for July Perry, for the 60 souls who died for the right to vote, for the thousands who lost everything. Like this video as an act of remembrance, as a promise that you won't let them be forgotten again. And share this. Share it with your family, with your church, with your friends, with people who need to know, with people who've been lied to their whole lives just like you were. Because the only way they can keep stealing from us is if we don't know what they stole. The only way they can keep oppressing us is if we don't know the history of that oppression. Knowledge is power. Truth is a weapon. And you now have both. Don't keep it to yourself. Spread it. Teach it. Make sure the next generation knows what you didn't know until today. Make sure your children learn about Ocoee before they learn the sanitized version of history they teach in schools. Make sure your grandchildren know they come from millionaires who were robbed, not from poor people who didn't try hard enough. Make sure everyone in your circle understands that the wealth gap is not a black failure. It's a white theft. That's how we change the narrative. That's how we demand what's owed. That's how we break the cycle. One video at a time. One conversation at a time. One person waking up at a time. And subscribe to this channel. Because Ocoee is just one story. There are hundreds more. Hundreds of massacres. Hundreds of stolen towns. Hundreds of erased histories. And we're going to tell every single one. Next week, Rosewood. The week after, Tulsa. Then Wilmington. Then all the others they tried to bury. We're going to resurrect every story they killed. We're going to speak every name they erased. We're going to demand every dollar they stole. And you're going to be part of it. Because this isn't just a history lesson. This is a movement. This is a reckoning. This is the generation that says enough. Enough lies. Enough theft. Enough oppression. We want what's ours. We demand what's owed. And we won't stop until justice is done. So subscribe. Join this community of truth-tellers and justice seekers. Stand with your ancestors. Stand with your descendants. Stand for what's right. And every time you vote, remember Mose Norman. Remember that he was willing to die for that right. And 60 people did die. Your vote is sacred. Your vote is powerful. Your vote was purchased with blood. Don't waste it. Don't take it for granted. And don't ever let anyone take it from you again. They're still trying. With voter ID laws, with polling place closures, with purged registrations, with felony disenfranchisement, they're still trying to do to you what they did to Mose Norman. Just with different methods. Don't let them. Vote anyway. Vote despite the barriers. Vote because your ancestors couldn't. Vote because they died trying. Vote like July Perry is watching. Vote like the 60 dead are counting on you. Vote like your children's future depends on it. Because it does. Every election, every primary, every local race, every ballot measure. Vote. Always. No matter what. That's how we honor the dead. That's how we reclaim our power. That's how we change the system. One ballot at a time. One voice at a time. One demand for justice at a time. Are you ready? Are you willing? Are you committed? Then say it with me. Say it out loud, right now. I will vote. I will speak truth. I will demand justice. I will honor my ancestors. I will reclaim my inheritance. Say it. Mean it. Live it. Because that's who you are. That's what you're here for. That's your purpose. Now let's pray. Father God, we come before you today with heavy hearts and awakened spirits. We remember the 60 souls who died in Ocoee. We speak their names into the atmosphere, even though history tried to erase them. We remember Mose Norman, who dared to vote and paid with his community. Lord, we thank you for his courage. We thank you that he didn't bow. We thank you that he stood on principle even when it cost everything. We remember Julius July Perry, who stood in his doorway with a rifle and said, "You're not taking him." Who chose honor over survival. Who died defending his friend. Lord, we thank you for his sacrifice. We thank you that he showed us what manhood looks like, what integrity looks like, what love looks like. We remember the mothers who carried babies through swamps, who ran barefoot through darkness, who chose their children's lives over their own safety. Lord, we thank you for their strength. We thank you that because of them, we're here. We remember the 60 we can't name because they didn't bother counting. But you know their names, Lord. You recorded every one. You caught every tear. You counted every drop of blood. And we ask you today for justice, for vindication, for restoration. We pray for justice for Ocoee, for Tulsa, for Rosewood, for Wilmington, for East St. Louis, for Elaine, for every massacre buried in silence, every stolen town, every erased community. We pray that the truth would continue to rise, that the mass graves would be found, that the descendants would be compensated, that the debt would be paid. We pray for reparations, not as charity, Lord, but as debt repaid, as stolen wealth returned, as justice finally done. We pray for the awakening of your people, that we would know our history, would understand what was stolen, would demand what's owed. Bless those who dig through archives searching for truth. Bless those who excavate mass graves looking for our ancestors. Bless those who teach this history when the schools won't. Bless those who refuse to forget. Strengthen those who resist erasure, who speak truth to power, who demand justice when it's uncomfortable, who won't settle for less than full restoration. And Lord, vindicate the memory of our ancestors. Let their blood cry out from the ground until every stolen acre is returned, until every dollar is repaid, until every name is remembered. Give us courage. Courage to vote like Mose Norman even when they try to stop us. Courage to stand like July Perry even when they threaten us. Courage to survive like those mothers in the swamp even when everything seems hopeless. Help us remember that we're not victims. We're survivors. We're warriors. We're heirs to stolen empires. Help us remember that our poverty is not our fault. It's their theft, and theft demands repayment. Help us remember that you preserved us through 400 years of hell for a reason. That this is our divine appointment, our moment, our time to break the curse and reclaim the inheritance. We receive that, Lord. We step into that calling. We accept that responsibility. We will vote. We will speak truth. We will demand justice. We will honor our ancestors. We will reclaim our inheritance, not for revenge, but for restoration. Not out of hatred, but out of love. Love for those who came before. Love for those who come after. Love for justice itself. Do this through us, Lord. Work through us. Move through us. Let this be the generation that finally sees the wealth transferred back, the land restored, the debt paid, the curse broken. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Walk in truth. Demand justice. Remember Ocoee.